Hello, and welcome to 365 Days of World Building, Divine Intervention, Day 8. Today we're going to talk about the structure of Lunarium and how that factored into the Pact of Awe. I went over it yesterday about how they needed to build this conduit, but today I wanted to talk about why they kind of needed to build it, and more importantly, how they sold it to the other nations. All right, so like we said, in the center here, you have like the main chamber, and in the main chamber, there's a few different theories on what it is. Because like I said, this was kind of like a secret cult sect thing that popped up in the Astral Nation. But the main theory was that by concentrating all this energy and Vesper energy into this main chamber, you were able to like harness like the full power of Vesper and become like the greatest mage there is, and like ever, the most powerful one. There's also other sects that say like you summon like a demigod or even Asytryl himself. So there's a few different things going out, but basically in the center of this entire building is a huge chamber that the entire floor is engraved with like runes and all kinds of other things used in the summoning process. So then on the outside you have these 6 chambers, and these are the main waiting rooms. So when it came time to send out emissaries to all the different nations, they said, you know, we have to, like, if we're going to do this the right way, we need to have like a central space where we all meet. And not only that, we basically have to build like this giant facility to host this treaty. There's no way, because at the time there really wasn't, there was like an idea of nations, but there wasn't legit like we're the protectors of the blade or we're the wanderers. There was like a party where they all got together and hung out, and then once they went their own ways, that was like the end of it. So what they had to do was when they send out emissaries for this treaty, they sent them out to like all the individual sects, and they basically said like, figure it out amongst yourselves and then come over for the treaty. And what ended up happening is a lot of sects sent like one person from each like sect. So you had thousands of people who were going to be in this treaty. So when they presented this plan, they said, what we're going to do is we're going to build a center where we're going to host everything. And then there'll be 6 main rooms that the nations can go and like go back to and huddle up and have like a conversation between the nation themselves. And then that would be how like the meetings would progress. And then what they were doing was then they had this outside ring, and this was more for like overnight stay or like servants and other people who like waited on these inner people. And so this was in like walking distance, where like you could travel in for the day and set up shop and then go into the meetings and then come back and sleep. And then on the next ring, what they said was they wanted to build out towers for all the nations that was a 100-day march. And so that's what these towers are. This is all a 100-day march out, and all the towers are 100 days from each other. So there was no way that like one nation could just pick up and then go invade the other one and kill them off. Like there was always like, you could see them move if there was going to be that case, and then another nation could come in. So basically what would happen is this is where the nations lived, or more importantly, like where the more important people would come in and wait to come down and then stay for the couple nights or whenever when they had a meeting. When this was like not in session, this is where the nation would hang out. And then on the outer ring, which you have like here, there. Yeah. On this outer ring, you had basically the ports of entry for all the different nations. And so this is where people would arrive and kind of get us situated to like what was going to be happening during the pact. And this would be like where the large majority of people would stay until it was either their turn to like come into the talks or travel in between, and that was another 100-day march out, and that kept people from, like I said, invading other countries. So for the most part, what would happen is the Wanderers of the Scene would pick up other tribes that they had like trading reputation and stuff with, and they'd bring them down and drop them off at certain places, like the Tower of Life, the Tower of Stone for Hoarfrost and the Everfolk, and then you have the Tower of Death for the tribes of the Valley. For the most part, the Protectors of the Blade traveled in on their own because Tower of Flame was right near where their territory was, and then you had Gula, which was specifically built for Lunarium, but it wasn't the old capital. They wanted like a new building. They didn't want to just like rehash this. And as you can see, you kind of have this like pattern that's going out. And so what the idea was, okay, so that's how it was sold to the nations. But the idea behind it, like we've been talking about, is that this is really a conduit for collecting Vesper energy. And so what you had was a large group of people from every nation settling here on the outside. And so here you had like a lot of green Vesper, right? And then here you had like a lot of like white, gray, Vegete Vesper. And as those, like we talked about with magic, like when you have worshippers in an area, this part like became mountains, right? And then this part became like a full-blown forest. And you have the like Mun Green in between, like, which is a mountain, a green mountain. And then you had this whole like fertile valley down here. And then here you can see this was actually once land, but once they set up the Tower of Fluid, and the more and more that they congregated here, the more and more the sea took over that, until it's literally just a tower that you can only reach by like boat. And then in here you'd have like all here, which you can't see it on this map, but on the other map that we have, it's a lot of valleys. It's a lot of like trenches and just desolate plains that ends up coming up from that like chaotic Vesper, and then all the like the blood rituals that the tribes of the valley were doing while they were there. And then up top you had Tower of the Flame, and you can see that the lava and like that chaotic land was coming in with them. And then of course up here you had the Vesper, or you had the Asytryl purple Vesper. So then as these nations moved into the center, they brought that worship and Vesper with them. And like a lot of the times, like I said, the people who were meeting on this like inner ring were the leaders, the ones who like this thing might be like a whole tribe comes, or like 20 people come, but they come to like protect, or like they're friends with the leader. This is like all the leaders get together, and that group of like a couple thousand leaders comes in here and stays here. Well, the talks are going on, you know, like when the talks, because what would happen is they'd have talks and then they'd vote on things and then they'd argue and then they'd take a break to like huddle up between themselves. So then you had all like the higher up leaders of these nations meet here. This is starting to get a little ridiculous, but then so then you had that Vesper energy come with them. And basically, as we talked about, and I'll throw up real quick when I get editing, but like the Pact of Awe took forever. It was generations. Some generations were like born and lived in the Tower of Stone in these lands, because it's like almost a millennium, thousands of years, like to get everybody on the same page and come to agreement on this treaty. It wasn't like a 10-year thing. It wasn't a 100-year thing. It was a gigantic process that took a long time. And throughout this entire process, all this Vesper energy is condensing and then getting brought with them to these inner chambers. And which was like the real goal. Nobody like who really set this idea up outside of that inner sanctum of that like sect or cult in Asytryl cared at all about the treaty. This was the main goal right here, was just to get that build up here so that one day they could enact like this ritual in the middle and gain like the ultimate Vesper power. So that wraps up day 8, and I don't know, we'll talk more about the Pact of Awe tomorrow.